Good morning, everyone, and happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining me on email management. This session is titled Turn Down the Volume. My name is Leslie Koziera, and I'm a certified records manager for Washington State Archives. And without further ado, let's get into it. A brief overview. We're going to talk about our email's public records. We're going to have a conversation on why all emails are not created equal, nor should you treat them as such. And then we'll talk about some tips and strategies on how to get some controls and manage those emails. Like I said before, they're a bit of a problem. So to answer the first question, are emails really public records? A resounding yes, absolutely. Emails are public records according to Chapter 40.14 RCW, which defines a public record as, regardless of physical form or characteristics, and including such copies thereof that have been made by or received by, two-way street there, any agency of the state of Washington in connection with the transaction of public business. And I always like to clarify, that means both your inbox and sent box contain public records. And emails are subject to all the rules and requirements surrounding public records, including retention and disposition, and including the rules on public disclosure and discovery. Now, a few of us remember fondly the days before emails, and when life was actually a little simpler. According to a 2011 report, the average worker receives 93 emails per day. So I'm going to ask you a question. How many emails do you average on any given day? So go ahead and throw some numbers at me if you would, please. And I know it depends on who you are and your role in your agency, but if that's the average, that's like close to 100 emails per day. I mean, to me, that's just stunning. And there again, I have good days and bad days. I have days when you walk away and you've got 20 emails, and then you have days when things are a little slow. Okay, so we've got someone who has 15. Anybody else want to volunteer and confess how many emails they get on the average? Okay, there's 45. Like I said, it does depend on who you are and the role in your agency. I'm going to ask another question. Raise your hands. How many of you check emails while you're away or on vacation? And I know when I ask that in a live setting, a lot of people say they don't want to come back to thousands of emails, and so they do their best to check things while they're on vacation. And I think that's kind of sad. Oh, we have someone who said they've learned not to check their emails anymore. I love that. Don't do that. It really doesn't benefit you, and you get paid time off. You're supposed to be enjoying yourself. So let's have a nostalgia moment. For those of us who are old enough and lived long enough to remember how the business process worked back in the day, there were kind of controls around the volume. You had a physical presence with the records, and you generally only created and mailed one, maybe 2 or 3 copies. Your CC list was really short. And then if you were a recipient, you usually got just 1 copy. And remember the good old days when 1 copy of something was circulated around and you used a routing slip? Remember getting little message, those pink message pads, and you might have a little spindle on your desk that you just stuck that message on there? And then when it actually came down to filing or saving a copy for your business records, you generally only kept 1 copy. And there was a human that did the filing for you. So let me ask you, how good is Outlook at managing your information for you? It's been my experience it doesn't do a great job. And there's no app for that, is there? I love this visual reminder. Remember the days of the community boards and the announcements in the break room? And if you wanted to find out something, you would go there to find out the information. It just wasn't shotgunned out to everybody. And remember Post-it notes when you made your little notes and then you threw them away because you didn't want your desk to look like that example. And remember the original in and out boxes? Oh yes, things were much simpler back then. Well, what has happened is things aren't so simple, are they? I call this our splat diagram. And this is actually created as a representation of a work group I was involved with. And so we have the one person in our work group, and she's circled in pink here. And this is a typical example of how communications tend to happen. And I think this is pretty typical. So you have somebody who sends out an email with an attachment. And then if it's a substantial group, it obviously goes out to multiple people. And you can place bets that that attachment goes and gets parked on a server or drive along with the email. And then sometimes you have people who go, well, I've got a SharePoint site, so I'm going to stick that on the SharePoint site. But in this particular work group, not everybody has access to SharePoint. So what we ended up doing is creating a box account for other people to access. So pretty soon we've got a bazillion copies and duplicates of the document, not to mention a bazillion emails that have been created to get this information and communicate with everybody. Now, what happens is on occasion you get a public records request. So the person with the exclamation point over here is in your legal and doing the disclosure. And look at all the different places people have to look and locate possible responsive information. Now, so if you're thinking about this for one document and emails sent surrounding that document, then you get IT involved because a lot of times they're the ones who have to actually go looking and poking around in those servers, pull those responses, and then get them to the public disclosure response team. And then down in the corner here, and I think it's pretty typical, you have the records officer. And you know there, as you can see, there is no arrows connecting that individual to anything else that's going around here. Now, I'm going to ask you another question. How many of you would say this is fairly typical about how your office operates? Just do a raise of your hand, please. Did we capture that this is pretty much a daily business process? Yeah. I'm not wrong, am I? So all of this changed when PC world hit. And as soon as the secretaries and file clerks were fired because technology would do all this and technology would handle it, users have literally been left to their own devices. And what has tended to happen is there's no agency structure that's been created. People have been left to create their own files and folders based on their personal preference. How many of you open up a drive and you see Mary's files or my stuff or 2010, or you've watched somebody's Outlook folders and there's a lengthy list, but there's no consistency within the business unit. Silos have sprung up everywhere. And IT has taken the focus. It's all about the systems and the new technologies. No one stepped back, and if you have tried to step back, your agency doesn't give you the authority or credence to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to get organized here. We need to have some consistencies with our processes. And if you think of it, back in the day with central files, there was a consistency to the process. People just didn't name a file folder and stuff it in the central files with whatever they wanted to call it. So we've literally lost governance over our emails and over our core business processes. Records management used to be part of the process. When you finished up with something, you knew what to do with the records. And you actually had a secretary or file clerk to help you with that. We no longer know where to keep, what to keep. We no longer know where to store anything. We lost controls about access and sharing. And certainly most people don't want to know how long they're supposed to keep it and what to do. And we all know our users don't care. Our users just want to know what to do. And it's a little too much. I mean, when you have email archiving systems that have millions of emails in them, to me that's kind of a sign that we've got a little bit of a hoarding situation going on. On the bestseller list, there are books written about organization and tidying up. And there's a TV show on hoarding. And there's actually health benefits to being decluttered and organized. So let's see if we can help you institute a wellness program and get some controls back into play. So the first thing people need to understand is not all emails are created equal. I'm still getting phone calls from customers and agencies going, I don't see emails on the retention schedule. Well, that's because an email is not a record series. Not all emails are created equal. Emails are created as part of a business process. And a couple of things. There is no requirement that an agency has to use emails for that purpose. I mean, we've survived for centuries not using emails. I get it, though. It's technology, it's cool, and it really has made a difference. But sometimes not to a benefit. If you create an email and hit send or reply, that's when your retention requirements and your disclosure requirements kick in. Now, this comes as a shock to a lot of people. Only certain emails will require retention, and most of them will not. Think about it. Think about what you do within your organization. What is your agency's mission? There is no requirement to keep all emails. Never has been, never will be. And this is a newsflash to some people. Even executives don't have to keep everything. That was not the intention behind that communication series. The description states made or received in connection with the transaction of public business, and that are not covered by a more specific record series. So I'll give you an example. You have executives that work on policy. So emails regarding the business process of developing a policy is a policy email. It's covered by a more specific record series. I know that one's caused some trouble in recent years, and we just really strive to explain to people, no, we don't want everything from an executive. We don't want the cookies in the break room announcements. We don't want the Seahawks Super Bowl winnings. We don't want anything of that nature. Emails that mean business are what you need to keep. And that requires some thought. Pop quiz time. So, okay, everyone paying attention? You come back to your desk following lunch and your computer indicates that you have 2 email messages waiting for you. I'd actually be happy if that happened, to only have 2. The first message is from the head of the agency requesting shared leave donations for an employee or colleague out on extended leave. And the other message is from your boss, giving you the timelines and goals for an upcoming project. Which message is a public record? A, B, both A and B, or neither one? So respond in chat, please. Okay, we're getting some answers here. A couple people say B only. One person says A. Well, actually, both of those emails are public records. Both of those emails have to do with agency business. And both of them have a retention requirement. So let's talk about that. Let's use our first example, message A. If you work for a public agency, pretty much anything to do with you is public business. Now, it's from the head of the agency, but it's about the content and the context of that email is about someone's leave. They're requesting donations for leave. So in a perfect world, that email should go to the department that administers leave for employees. So technically speaking, that's a personnel or HR record. That works. Now, I know a lot of agencies have a policy saying that the sender should be responsible for the retention of those emails. But if you think about it, should the head of the agency be the one managing and maintaining a shared leave request? The answer to that is no. It's about shared leave. It has a retention requirement about that fits leave, and that's where it should go live out the retention. And it should go with the other related records. One of the problems with emails is they're kind of out of context with the rest of what's going on with that process. So that's the first example. Example B, the message from your boss. It's about a project. So wouldn't it make sense that if that's an email regarding a project and it has timelines containing in the email and it has goals, wouldn't it make sense to align that with the project files? There again, it's all about what's going on, what's part of the business process, what does that email have to do with anything, and then figuring out a structure and a parking place for it. I know a lot of people use their Outlook as their filing systems, but that's not really a best practice, and it still perpetuates the silo thing. I know it's not easy. I get a lot of questions. Are you required to keep it? And my responding answer technically is, don't know. Are you? I don't know everybody's business, although I'm getting pretty close. I am becoming the world's biggest busybody. But within your agency, you know your business more than anybody. You know your business processes. So certain emails you will be required to keep. A lot of them you won't be. And there's really only 3 reasons you keep records anyway. To meet your business and operational needs, to meet your legal obligations, and I'm not talking about disclosure, I'm talking about other obligations you may have tied to the mission that your agency has. And then the other reason you keep records is for the continuity of your business and for historic purposes. Just in case is not a valid reason to keep anything. But that's when you're talking about email management. You need to kind of sit down with the business units and determine what is your process? What are your particular requirements? Do you need to show proof of deliberative processes? I don't know that. If you're in HR, emails serve as a date and timestamp sometimes. And if you're doing recruiting and you're allowing folks to submit applications in an email with their resume and application as an attachment, because of that date and timestamp the email shows, you will want to keep that email, because that serves as your proof that that application was submitted before the closing date. Let's face it, sometimes emails get stuck into spam filters. So in that instance, you're going to want to keep that email along with those attachments because that's your date and timestamp. But in a lot of instances, the email is just the envelope, and it's the attachment as a standalone record. But that's why you have to know your business. What's being said and done? What is going on? Is there some kind of a transaction happening within that email? And again, you have to kind of sit down and do a little bit of a business analytics to help build a structure that people can follow. I'm going to place a bet that it has to do with your agency management, financial management, and so on and so forth. There's going to be a series that will cover it. But there again, it also depends on going on. If it's just a general notification, you know, big whoop. If it's the equivalent of sticking a Post-it note on somebody's desk that the next meeting is next Wednesday, you don't have to save that. So many emails that you get do not require action at all. They're just simply a notification. Your Outlook reads and receipts and things like that. You don't have a requirement to keep that unless you need proof. There is a whole section in the retention schedules for records with minimal retention. There is a bucket list of how many emails you do not have a requirement to keep. Routine, broadcast type of general administrative nature, secondary copies and duplicates, external announcements and notifications. Unless it's something that you need to keep as part of a business transaction for your agency, don't keep them. Here's another list: birthdays, announcements, new babies. And what happens is people get these lovely announcements and then they hit reply all. So let's do some math. Have an agency, 200 people. One person hits reply all on somebody's new baby. Congratulations. Boom, 200 extra emails. Congratulations, potluck announcements, cookies in the break rooms. Whenever it snows, there's a spike in emails. Whenever the Seahawks won a game, there's a spike in emails. None of those have anything to do with your business. Please don't keep them. Yes, what the Seahawks did was historic, but it's not government business. So here's some more examples. If nothing else, maybe you can help people and develop a cheat sheet. Just make a little table of if it looks like this kind of email, please get rid of it. Don't keep it. Give me a couple of minutes. I'm going to talk about email archiving systems in a minute. You get traffic alerts, all these sort of things. To meet retention requirements, all you need is the one primary copy of that record. It is up to the agency to establish those processes. There again, it's almost back to the future. Try and help people develop that central files type mentality, that there's a standard to the naming conventions, that there's some standards with what you call stuff. Your business processes, what you do has not changed. Maybe even go to your paper files and take cues from that. Appoint some roles and responsibilities. Who needs to keep it? Have some conversations. Develop a process around the management of emails. So one of the best ways to start the conversation is to sit down with the business users and identify their business emails. Then, once you've been able to identify the typical average business email for that type of business unit, then you help them organize. And then you try and help people to get to the point of taking action. Think of it this way: if you can get your users as part of their business process to develop a touch-it-once approach, or otherwise known as know going in what needs to happen, then it becomes part of the routine. It becomes part of the process, just like back in the bad old days, when you used to be able to clean up your desk and then hand your records off to a file clerk. In this case, you just designate a parking space and tell people, okay, if it has to do with somebody's leave request, it goes here. If it has to do with Project A, it goes here. If it has to do with a financial transaction, it goes here. Now I'm going to ask, how many of you, show of hands please, actually also do public disclosure? You have my complete sympathy. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Now you all know how important it is to know what your records are and know where to find them. And right now, emails are the biggest problem when it comes to locating and searching for responsive information. Believe me, I've shared that pain. I used to work at Department of Ecology, and I know you have days when your eyeballs start to bleed reviewing emails because your users don't understand and there's not been any established processes for emails. What it's about managing an agency informational asset. And I've been working on this initiative for ECMs, and Dave Kirk, formerly from the CIO's office, now with Department of Financial Institutions, came up with this great analogy. It's all about building and classifying information so that users can follow it along. It's storing things so that everybody can find them when necessary. Kind of think like a grocery store. Now, I know I get annoyed when Costco moves things, but most of your established grocery stores have a plan in place for their products. And everybody's got to follow the plan. It's not been left up to the store clerks to decide where they want to store stuff. It's not left up to the cashiers to decide where they want to put stuff. Someone sat down and developed a classification schema for that store. And it's pretty basic. You know, you've got produce and deli and meat departments, and you have health and beauty aids, and you have toys, and so on and so forth. There's a predefined structure to it, though. And everybody follows that same structure. No one gets to park it somewhere else. You know, the stalkers don't get to put the jam in with the ice cream, although they might put it next door. Same thing, though. It's not up to them to decide where they want to put stuff. The store has a plan. It's a structure. Somebody took time to develop it. And then everybody knows about it. The cashiers can direct traffic. The restockers can restock as appropriate. And then best of all, there's a plan for getting rid of the expired stuff and the old and outdated and rotting fruit. How fabulous is that? So it is going to take some time, though. We've had about 20 years of email abuse going on. But this is the way and the best way that agencies have to develop a plan and a structure, develop a parking garage, basically, or a grocery store concept, and get people to understand everything has a place, there's a place for everything, and better than anything, get rid of the expired and the rot. ROT in my world is an acronym for ROT is redundant, outdated, and trivial. Now, you can't talk about emails without someone talking about, can't I just print and file? The answer is no. Electronics must be retained in an electronic format and remain usable, searchable, retrievable, and authentic for the entire length of that designated retention period. So what happens when you print an email is you completely remove all the metadata that supports its authenticity. When you print an email, you can't prove that that's an email from the print version. I have created some lovely emails using Word, and nobody can tell the difference if you place something in front of them. So when you disconnect the metadata, you can disconnect the authenticity of that information. So, I mean, you can still print emails to work with them, absolutely, but don't print and delete. It's all about making a plan. There again, remember the days when there was a logical system, well, mostly logical, based on an agency's business process. So we just need to bring people kind of kicking and screaming back to that idea. Now, have any of you seen that Hoarder show on A&E? I personally have a morbid fascination with it. But that's exactly what's happened. We've turned into a nation of digital hoarders. So some things you can do to help turn down the volume of emails. The first one is simple. Limit use of emails. Yes, we do have a tendency to use emails for everything. We'll do chat, we'll make comments, we'll use emails and send them to the colleague in the cubicle next door. Just tell people to stop that. Start using the phone more. Incorporate wellness into your day. Get some exercise, walk down the hall, get some more FaceTime meetings. It might be time to re-educate and remind users on appropriate use of emails. I mean, every week there seems to be something with emails. Thank you, Hillary. But develop some policies and enforce them. Encourage people, think twice, click only once, if at all. Like I said, there's no requirement you have to use emails, but maybe talk about what does that look like for a business unit? What does that process mean? Can you do some streamlining? Can you do some other practices that will get the information you need to do your job, but avoid using emails for everything? Are emails really part of an effective business process? I don't know. It's going to depend on what you do. Maybe rethink certain processes. Maybe consider building an intranet community bulletin board. Post one notice and let people know it's on the board, and let people go there if they want to, instead of creating an email and sending it out to everybody, which a very small percentage of them probably care. Rethink maybe how, if you're a board or a commission, how you do board business. Instead of sending an email out to all the members, create a parking spot on a website, send them the link. There are different ways you can reconsider how we're using email to make it easier and keep the volume down. And having limitations as to where you put this information and how people find it can really help cut down the volume of emails. I mean, it's pretty basic and it's not complicated. And a lot of times it's just rethinking. Instead of being reactive, think about this. Make sure using an email is really necessary, especially when it comes to the chat, the social, the general, the irreverent stuff. Emails were originally created to kind of be like the replacement of a Western Union telegram. Short, sweet, and to the point. However, we've all seen equivalents of War and Peace. Paragraphs long. That kind of defeats the purpose of the original emails. Avoid strings. If you find yourself hitting reply a second time, step back from the keyboard, maybe pick up the phone to clarify, and then summarize your response and call it good. Yes, it is a recommendation you keep every email in a string. Now, I can hear you screaming from here. The reason behind that is that metadata thing. Each email literally has a unique message identifier along with the rest of the metadata, over and above your date and time stamp and to and from and subject lines. If you keep only the last one in the string, you've disconnected that identifying metadata that proves the authenticity of every email in that string. And I've had conversations with computer forensics experts and attorneys. Really good reason then to keep your emails short and sweet and to the point. Another bad habit we've all fallen into, myself included, commingling subjects and topics. That's the other really painful thing if you're having to review emails for disclosure, is you might come across an email that on the surface of things looks like, hey, let's do lunch. And next thing you know, they're executing business in the second paragraph. Have people rethink what they're using emails for. Have them create meaningful emails and meaningful subject lines, so you're not having to search through millions of them to find the one meaningful email. I know, it's a long laundry list of things, isn't it? Humans are creatures of habit, I know that. But things can change. Again, if you've ever seen that Hoarder show, it takes some work. There is some agony involved, there's some anguish, but as the agency, you get to define your terms. You get to define the processes for your business records. They're, again, really, really helpful. Maybe you can get people to think about how they handle their personal mail. I'm one of those people that I stop at the recycle bin before I even go in the house with my mail. If you know going in what needs to happen, it becomes part of the process. And once you become familiar with what is worthy with retention and what isn't, and if people know where it needs to be filed or stored, then it becomes part of the process again. And you'll try and get people to perform those housekeeping duties. Visual hoarding is not good. And yes, we do have people in my world who think, yeah, let's just keep everything. Storage is cheap. But when you go looking for stuff, and regardless of whether it's looking for discovery or disclosure, just looking for something to do your job, think needle in a haystack. It's a lot easier to find that needle in a handful of hay than it is the entire barn and all the silos scattered on the property. Yep, storage is cheap, absolutely. You can get a 10 gigabyte drive for about 10 bucks. And oh, by the way, let's do something creative. Let's do some math. 1 gigabyte is about 100,000 emails. Do some math. So if you've got 5 gigabytes, that's 500,000 emails. Now, how many of you think it would be fun to have to review 500,000 emails to find the ones responsive to requests? And what generally happens if people don't, if they get tired of looking for something, they'll send another email. Is it a problem, got a question, to change an irreverent subject line on an email received to something useful? Well, if the email is something useful, yes, change it to mean what the content is. And there again, if you're saving the metadata, that'll indicate what happened. I know, sometimes you get an email that just says forward in it, but it has to do with a public records request. Absolutely identify it. Makes sense, right? Like I said, it's a problem because people don't understand. But making it an identifiable record will help you in the long run. We always encourage people to let it go. Hanging on to millions of emails is not a sustainable option. It costs money, and over time it can cost a lot of money. It's just not a sustainable practice. If your agency does make use of an email archiving system, and a lot of you do, try and get your folks to understand it is only a tool for storage and searching. It is not actually managing emails. It continues to perpetuate the silo approach, and it perpetuates hoarding. A lot of these systems actually have no functionality within them for defensible disposition. A lot of these systems make copies of all this stuff, and next thing you know, you literally have millions of emails sitting someplace and no practical way or easy way of managing them and then being able to get rid of the ones you're not required to keep. There again, visualize a hoarder. That's exactly what happens when you use these email archiving systems. Disposition is an action. It's an action verb to do something and not just let it sit there. Work with your IT. A lot of systems get implemented and they're not fully utilized. Find out if there is any functionality for destruction or disposition within that system. Can you work on configuring it so that at least the emails that are junk, at least the emails you have no requirement to keep, are not stored? And then think proactively. Plan for a different future. We are working along with a group of agencies to work on getting master contracts available for some enterprise content management systems to help get rid of the silos and to keep and manage appropriately all related electronic records together. It's coming, it's going to be some time, but in the interim, see if there's some things you can do to help control the volume and get rid of the crap. Quick little graphic. Email management is pretty easy. You create or receive an email. What's going on? Should it stay or should it go? If it's go, get rid of it. Hit delete and delete. Delete from your delete folder. Work with your IT to enable and configure actual destruction and going bye-bye of those emails. You have no need to keep it. If you have a need to keep it, then store it someplace that has meaning, identify the email as an identifiable business record, and find a parking place for it. You can develop cheat sheets, a shout out and a thank you to Kyle Stannert from the City of Bellevue, Terry Cole from Benton County, and Christine Lavelle from Washington State Patrol. They were very gracious to share some examples with me. You can do the same thing within your organization. Help people understand they don't have to keep everything. Keeping everything doesn't work, and it causes more problems in the long run. A couple more examples. These are all options. In a perfect world scenario, everyone will have these content management systems. In between that, we have some agencies who are storing emails in their Outlook. Great. Get a plan, get a structure that aligns with your related records. You can save emails on a shared drive for longer-term retention, and you can share emails on a shared drive together with the related records. There again, there's a lot of work involved. You have to get people reconditioned, but it can be done. If nothing else, though, if you can just get people to understand, don't keep all those emails. Give people stuff in writing. If it looks like this, cheat sheets, tables, charts, let them know if it looks like this, talks like this, works like this as an email. No requirement to keep the junk. If you've identified a business record, help them understand where it needs to go. Like I said, however you've got it structured, whatever you establish for your organization, just make sure there's controls and a structure in place. It's all about getting back to that controlled environment. There again, technology has done some great things, but when technology hit our desks, we lost that physical limit. We lost the ability to, when storage became an issue, you had to clean out the file room or buy more appropriate storage. You couldn't just keep shoving things in there. And then I'm sure some of you have been the inheritor of really messy storage rooms. Not helpful. It's all about establishing controls and establishing structures. So here's some visuals. If you use Outlook, and our office has had to kind of adapt a hybrid approach. We have our headquarters in Olympia, but I have colleagues who do training in Eastern Washington. We've got the Northwest region. So what we sat down and developed, and there again, this is about our business process. We do a lot of training. Now we're also a very small group. And so if someone happens to be in the emergency room and is going to have their appendix out, that would have been me, because we had shared information, these are shared folders, I could just make a phone call to Russell and tell him, you know what, I'm going to be out for a few weeks, look at my calendar, and then Russell could go in there and share the information to either substitute or cancel that training. Hybrid approach, it's what we've done. Now we're lucky enough to be piloting an ECM, so this is kind of going away. But hopefully this will give you some ideas on how to take a business process and develop a structure surrounding that. You know, if you're organizing, you want to use a shared drive. Use your retention schedule. You can develop a drive for whatever business unit is, and then drill down and build categories of folders accordingly. Yes, it's a manual process, but at least it's a process. And then someone can be tasked as the file clerk or the dragon lady or the gatekeeper to keep an eye on these folders. And on a yearly or semi-yearly basis, go in there and see what's eligible for destruction, and then get rid of it. One of the nicer things about Outlook, or excuse me, using the network drives, is at least you can put the emails together with your other records, your other documents. There again, it would take some getting used to, take some practice, but it's an option until you can get to the stage where you might be able to use a system. Basically, think of it as this way. Your servers and drives are nothing more than electronic file cabinets. Up to the agency to build those file cabinets and build the appropriate storage and structure for those business units. Another example, like I said, it's really cool to save those emails in. You've got the other documents involving that issue. When I do training, I do letters of exemption for one of the venues, we do PowerPoints, we have PDFs, I have sign-in sheets. So keeping your emails together with that means one place someone has to look for that information. And it's really cool for your public disclosure folks to have to look at one place. Just a few more examples. Does anybody have any questions as I'm going along here? I got one in chat that I hopefully answered. Another example, there again, a functional folder, agency management. We support a lot of different committees. So we've built on a shared drive committee folders for each of the ones we administer and support, and that's where we park the information. It's all about defining the parking places for your business records and directing traffic. That's one of the best things about enterprise content management systems offers is the same thing. You can plunk those emails together with all the other related records into a system that then helps automate the disposition process. It's very similar to build it on a shared drive. These systems just help automate retention, disposition, have all the audit trails and everything built in as the process, plus a bucket load of all sorts of cool tools. Your options are endless. Change is hard, and we've become conditioned, Pavlov is right, as humans we do tend to become very habit-driven, and education and training is key. If you build it though, they will come. Each agency is responsible for defining what those structures look like for them. There again, think about grocery stores and the way they do things. Yes, it took somebody some time and effort to build a plan for a grocery chain. But it's up to the agency, and look for your past. Look at your paper folders and how you structured those. And then develop the plan, draw those boundaries, create the policies. Yeah, you can try and make it fun. You can make it engaging. Maybe you can have cleanup contests. Maybe you can pick April as International Records and Information Management Month, which it is, and start getting people engaged. And I just want to know that, yes, there's some pain and anguish involved. And if you've ever watched that show on A&E, the biggest emotion after everything's said and done is relief. It's going to take some time, going to take some energy. There are some available tools on our website. Do an inventory. Oh, thank you, Audrey. Yeah, do a records inventory. Find out what's there. Find out what you have. Work with your business units to determine what do you need to keep. And then work on doing some housekeeping. And housekeeping is important. Everybody knows if you're keeping a tidy house, you don't have to worry about uninvited guests, like an auditor or a public disclosure request. It's all about the process. It can be done. Any other questions? Well, I hope I was helpful today. I will distribute this slide deck out to the list of people who signed up. If you want a certificate of completion, there's a link online. Our certificates of completion are self-service. I did record this session. If it turns out to be a good one, it will be available and posted on our website. I would like to thank everyone for bearing with me this morning. Please go forth and organize. Thank you very much.